Call this meeting to order. First on agenda will be closed session. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Be it resolved, Montgomery County Board of Supervisors of Montgomery County, Virginia hereby enter into closed meeting for the purpose of discussing the following. Section 2.2-3711. Consultation with legal counsel employed or retained by a public body regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel. 1. Boundary line adjustment, Town of Blacksburg. 2. Incentive agreement, former Blacksburg Middle School. Madam Secretary, you call roll, please.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Wizakowski?
Aye.
Mr. Moss?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Chair King?
Aye.
5 ayes.
Is there a motion to come out of closed session?
So moved.
Second.
Whereas the Board of Supervisors of Montgomery County has convened a closed meeting on the date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provision of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and whereas Section 2.2-3711 of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by the Board that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia laws. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Supervisors of Montgomery County, Virginia hereby certify that to the best of each member's knowledge, 1, only public business matters lawfully exempt from open meetings requirement by Virginia laws were discussed in a closed meeting to which this certification resolution applies. And 2, only such public business matters as were identified in the motion conveyed to closed meetings were heard, discussed, or considered by the Board. Madam Secretary, you call roll, please.
Mr. Moss?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Wizakowski?
Aye.
Chair King?
Aye.
6 ayes.
Before we get started, you may notice that Supervisor Shepherd's not with us tonight. He had a minor operation on his knee, and a doctor asked him to stay off of it for a couple of days. Turn this over to the county administrator.
Sir, thank you. At this time, if we could stand, we will observe a moment of silence, and then I'll lead the group in the Pledge of Allegiance. Let us pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Now we'll move into a public hearing. First on order be ordinance solid waste flow control.
Sir, and we do have a number of people signed up for this public hearing this evening related to this matter. The first person signed up this evening is Alan Cummings. And if you will, when you come to the podium, if you'll state your name and address, and you have 5 minutes.
Alan Cummins. I live at 235 Citrine Court in Christiansburg, Virginia. Good evening.
Good evening.
Again, my name is Alan Cummins. I am the Executive Director of the Montgomery Regional Solid Waste Authority, or MRSWA for short. We're located in Christiansburg, Virginia. I am here to support the solid waste flow control ordinance. Flow control only deals with trash, not recycling, construction debris, or other waste streams. Flow control would help assist MRSWA to keep the economies of scale it has had the past 25 years, which has led to lower disposal fees and allowed many free services to be provided to the citizens of Montgomery County. Economy of scale means the more tonnage you have, the lower your fees will be, and the more services you can provide. MRSWA is overseen by a 5-member board, which is made up of representatives from Virginia Tech, Montgomery County, Town of Blacksburg, Town of Christiansburg, and a citizen at large. The board's oversight the past 25 years has pushed MRSWA to run very efficient. reducing staff from 26 to 13, and only raising trash disposal fees a total of less than 3%. And that's not 3% a year, but over the entire 25-year period. Our 3 permitted facilities, which are the transfer station, tire facility, enclosed landfill, are regulated by the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality, and our facilities have not received an environmental violation the past 18 years. Economies of scale can be disrupted at Merswa when trash is taken out of county. One example would be a facility located in Christiansburg, where the trash is being hauled around 3 hours away from Montgomery County and being disposed in a landfill. The result of such activity could decrease the amount of waste handled at Merswa, possibly by up to 30%, maybe even up to 50%, disturbing the economies of scale. With such a disruption, the effects on Merswa could result in fee increases for all solid waste services, recycling services, could have service reductions, elimination of free services, elimination of recycling payback programs, and reduction in staff. So flow control will continue the economies of scale that has allowed Merswa to operate at a high level of efficiency, as it has the past 25 years, and will help in the future to keep fees low, current services to continue, and help services improve and grow in the future. Merswa supports the flow control ordinance. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Board members, the next speaker that signed up this evening is Rob Guidry. Rob Guidry. Sorry, Rob.
Good evening, Mr. King, Dan, board members, Mr. Meadows. Thank you for the opportunity here to speak on behalf. My name is Rob Guidry. I'm President and CEO of CFS in Blue Ridge, as well as CFS out of the Petersburg, Virginia marketplace. I reside at 611 Woodland Road in Blacksburg. I'm here tonight to be against flow control, and I happen to be the individual that was discussed and brought up, I guess, that is responsible ultimately for the so-called MRF that's being built, the $1.5 million building that's being constructed here in the town of Christiansburg. That being said, we didn't do this by just coming in one day and deciding we wanted to be in Christiansburg. We studied this market for a long time. We in turn reached out to the town of Christiansburg and sold them on exactly what our aspect was, and that was taking 3 businesses in this marketplace, that being the former Blue Ridge Recycling, located at 205 Scattergood Road, along with Bobby Phillips's location, New River Recycling, located down in Radford, and then Bob's Refuge Service, located in Christiansburg as well. In turn, we talked to the Department of Environmental Quality, who regulates this, explained to them exactly our intentions of taking 2 permits, putting them into 1 if we could get the town to sign off on it, and more importantly, get the Montgomery County Regional Solid Waste Authority to sign off on it. So in turn, we did that. We did our homework, we met with DEQ, we met with the town. I'm in receipt here of a letter, and I've got a package for each one of you folks. But here's a letter dated February the 8th, 2018, signed by Randy Wingfield, talking about he understands our proposal and acceptance of what we want to do. Secondly, here's a request that I have to have from DEQ to be part of the solid waste plan that's signed by the Montgomery County Regional Solid Waste Authority, understanding exactly what we were going to do. So my question is, in turn, number 1, we are a material recovery facility. By law, I don't have to recycle anything by a percentage basis, but we know what the state's mandate is of 25%, and in turn, we volunteered to put that in our operating agreement. That operating agreement obviously is monitored by the town, as well as Department of Environmental Quality, and has been accepted. In your package, you also receive an engineering report that shows all those things, of exactly what our operation is and what we intend to do on a daily basis. I guess my question would be this: why would we sign off and know that we're doing this, give approval as the Solid Waste Authority, give approval of the town, and then we're going to change the rules as we start the process? We are in construction mode of the new $1.5 million building. In turn, we've invested right at $8.2 million in this market area since February 2018. At the end of the day, I refer to your own solid waste plan that has several sections in it. Solid waste management systems, section 3.0, and again, this is in your package. These services are provided by both the public and private sectors, with the latter mainly responsible for providing collection and disposal services to commercial and industrial customers. Also in your solid waste plan, in that same section, it comes down and talks about single-family residence, multi-family apartment complexes, businesses, and industrials not served by the town crews can privately contract their own refuge collection services. As with Blacksburg, commercial haulers operating in Christiansburg are not required to use the Montgomery County Regional Solid Waste Authority facilities, and it is believed that at least a portion of the waste elected by the commercial haulers is transported out of the facilities to other places outside of the county for disposal. Folks, that's exactly what we do. And I do basically about 85 to 90% for the Central Virginia Waste Management Authority down in Richmond. We've never had a flow control issue. We leave competition, and that leads me to, we talk about how cheap your number is. We actually, currently, our disposal rate's $2.50 less than what you are at the Montgomery County Regional Solid Waste Authority. In turn, we truck our trash 150 miles. They truck theirs 20 miles. So at some point, you've got to look at the economy of scale, as we talked about, and I heard Mr. Cummings mention. The economy of scale is how you operate your business. You have to be efficient, you have to cut costs when need be, and you have to understand what you're doing on a daily basis. I can't sit here and tell you we are going to raise prices. I don't know. But I can tell you, as we said here today, our rate's been the same. If you bring me multiple tons, my rate is even going to be less. It's an economy of scale, just as he mentioned. So in turn, I go through the different things and I look at where we are. So we talk about rate, we're cheaper. Who, what, when? Montgomery County Regional does MSW, C&D when desired. We do C&D, MSW every single day, as well as we physically pull material from the loads. We're physically pulling cardboard, we're physically pulling metal, we're physically pulling concrete, and those materials in turn are received at Mr. Phillips' location down in Radford. The balance of what's out and is considered MSW, we do transport to our landfill down in Wienerburg County, Virginia.
All right, excuse me, sir, your 5 minutes is up.
Okay,
But if you want to leave that information with the
Yes.
secretary,
that'd be great.
we appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Board members, our next speaker that signed up this evening is Lisa Cardell.
Good evening. Thank you for letting us speak this evening. My name is Lisa Cardell, and I'm here tonight representing the Virginia Waste Industries Association. I'm the vice chair of the association. I'm also director of public affairs for Waste Management of Virginia. The Virginia Waste Industries Association represents private waste companies conducting business in Virginia. Our members own, operate commercial waste facilities, recycling facilities, disposal facilities, as well as provide consulting and financial services to the industry. Tonight I'm here to speak in opposition of flow control. Flow control is typically introduced when a local government can no longer compete in the marketplace. The local government then tries to feed their facilities with the trash in the area. Flow control is a scheme that forces local haulers to transport trash to the Montgomery County Solid Waste Authority's transfer station. Why should Montgomery County residents and businesses be concerned about flow control? Flow control creates a monopoly. Monopolies are insulated from competition and free market. Monopolies have no need to be efficient, service-oriented, or cost-effective because they have a captive customer base. Any scheme that favors a garbage processor at the expense of others is unfair and discriminatory. Flow control creates a hidden tax that makes trash disposal more expensive. A study by the National Economic Research Associates showed that flow control increases disposal on an average of 40% where it's been imposed. With flow control, residents and businesses are forced to pay above market disposal costs. And without flow control, government-owned facilities are forced to compete with a more efficient private sector disposal facility. In a competitive market, the consumer is the one that benefits. Flow control is a significant financial impact to increase costs on all concerned. Increased disposal costs for the garbage collectors means increased disposal costs for the residents and the businesses in your area. Flow control restricts Restrictions would harm some consumers by denying them access to a cost-effective disposal. Flow control can also hurt the economy of Montgomery County and impact the ability to attract new businesses and jobs because the cost of trash disposal is a significant factor when many businesses are looking to relocate. Flow control does not provide any additional health or environmental benefits. The US EPA said that enforcement of federal and state regulations, not flow control, protects the public health and the environment. So in summary, flow control provides no environmental benefits, does not improve recycling programs, it eliminates competition and results in higher prices for your businesses and residents, and it eliminates any incentive for the county to become more efficient and price competitive. So today we hope that the board would realize the negative impact of flow control and to vote against the flow control, or at least postpone your vote and allow the private industry and businesses to come in and speak with you for more information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Board members, our next speaker tonight is Dennis Moriarty.
Good evening. My name is Dennis Moriarty, and I'm the General Manager for Republic Services out of Roanoke, Virginia, and I'm here tonight to stand in opposition of flow control. Flow control creates a monopoly for trash disposal, which will result in increased disposal costs. For what reason does the county have to keep costs low if there's no competition? A study by the National Economic Research Association show that flow control increases disposal costs by 40% since the government-owned facilities are not forced to compete with lower cost and more efficient alternatives. What, in a sense, we're doing is we're going to raise disposal cost, and we will have to pass that along to the residents and local businesses. Republic Services is in direct opposition of flow control, and we wish you would remove the ordinance or reconsider the motion. Thank you.
Board members, our next speaker that's signed up this evening is Tommy Stump.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you. I'm Tommy Stump, President and CEO of First Piedmont Corporation. I reside at 1842 Chalkfellow Road, Chatham, Virginia. We are a regional waste management company serving the South Side, Central, and Western Virginia. And we philosophically oppose the creation of any monopoly, and that is what flow control does. I have been involved in the waste haul and disposal business for 39 years, and I have never known competition to be a bad thing as long as everyone competes fairly with the same set of rules. As relates to flow control versus straight up competition here in Montgomery County, here's where I'm confused. Why would the authority need to have an upper hand or a different set of rules like flow control when your competition has the cost disadvantage of hauling waste approximately 150 miles as opposed to your some 20 miles? I don't understand that. You know, with an efficient run operation, the county should always be the low-cost provider. Thank you for your time. In closing, I'd just like to say there are a number of folks here tonight that are here in support of the opposition to flow control that are not going to speak out of respect to your time. I'd just like to ask them to stand up if they would, the ones that are here that aren't going to speak. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Board members, our next speaker is Paul Jacobson.
Good evening, members of the board. I'm Paul Jacobson, attorney at the law firm of Sands Anderson, and I represent the Montgomery Regional Solid Waste Authority. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight to you in favor of the proposed municipal solid waste flow control ordinance. Virginia law provides that local government regulation of solid waste is an exercise of police powers to promote the general health and welfare. Similarly, the U.S. Supreme Court has held that a flow control ordinance benefiting publicly owned solid waste disposal facilities is constitutional. Chief Justice Roberts and Justice Scalia both noted in that decision that solid waste is a traditional local government function, and the courts should not interfere on the basis of the U.S. Constitution Commerce Clause. As you know, the authority was formed 25 years ago by Montgomery County and Town of Christiansburg and Town of Blacksburg and Virginia Tech as a public option for the comprehensive solid waste disposal and recycling services. The authority has a 25-year history of providing cost-effective solid waste disposal services to Montgomery County and others. As I believe we've discussed, over the last 25 years, the costs have gone up 3% total, not 3% a year, 3% total over 25 years, much lower than the rate of inflation. I understand the comments from the private sector representatives today, but those private sector representatives are not providing the free services that Montgomery Regional provides, including household hazardous waste such as paint, waste oil, antifreeze, including white goods, appliances, including lamps, batteries, known as universal waste, and electronic waste, computers, television sets, and so forth. The authority has noted new players in the local solid waste service market, as has been mentioned tonight, and has provided the county with a financial analysis from CHA engineers outlining potential costs to the county up to hundreds of thousands of dollars if flow control is not implemented, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. If the county adopts the ordinance, there's a strong presumption of validity to the county's action. I'm aware of at least 10 other Virginia localities that have adopted flow control ordinance in the last 12 years or so. The ordinance is carefully drafted, and the counties receive voluminous backup documentation to the findings made in the ordinance. The ordinance recognizes the statutory right of a private company to maintain its current level of business for 5 years. This is a mechanism provided by the General Assembly to mitigate any negative effects that there might be on private business from flow control. In addition, flow control does not affect collection or hauling. It affects disposal. So anyone who's a local hauler who probably in the past has used Montgomery Regional will still use Montgomery Regional under flow control. It does not affect the collection or the pickup or the hauling, other than the disposal site. The authorities operated efficiently, as we've said, and will have the same incentives to operate efficiently after flow control. One reason it operates efficiently, as noted, is there's oversight by the authority board, which is appointed by Montgomery County, Christiansburg, Blacksburg, Virginia Tech, which are the biggest customers of the authority. So there is every incentive for the authority to continue to maintain its efficient operation. If it did not, Mr. Vichikowski and other board members, I'm sure, representing the county, the two towns, and the university, would have something to say about that. It's not going to change under flow control. There has been information passed around that, and we've heard talk of monopoly and so forth, and prices rising. The regulation by the member jurisdictions debunks that theory. It simply doesn't hold water. In summary, we submit that the flow control ordinance would result in failure to adopt flow control would result in significant cost to the county, and we ask your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Last speaker that we have signed up on this public hearing is Spencer Hall.
Ladies and gentlemen, can you hear me okay? Yeah. My name is Spencer Hall, 3275 Torrey Pine Circle in Rhiner, Virginia. And I come here in favor of this ordinance. Just to let you know my experience, I worked with Roger Hedgepath, John Lemley, and Joe Gorman putting the Montgomery Regional Solid Waste Authority together. I worked with Tom Starnes and Buddy Spires redoing the New River Resource Authority so that everybody could be a part of it in the New River Valley. I was twice chairman of the New River Resource Authority up in Dublin. I've been around the block on this stuff. When I saw this in the paper, and you all seen it too, it's been on every paper, I started looking at it and gee whiz, you know. I'm sure that Waste Management and Realistic Services and the other gentlemen up here are probably behind this. Waste Management owns 250 landfills in the United States. Republic owns 190. Together, these two companies own 25% of all the landfill space in the United States. So, you know, don't talk to me about monopoly. You know, I don't want to hear that. In here, they mentioned, they refer to a EPA study, which is online and was done in 1995, but it is probably the most dedicated document to flow control that there is now. There are pieces on the internet here and there, but this is probably the golden, and they refer to it in here. They do that. And so I go into there and I look at what is in this document from the EPA. 35 states plus the District of Columbia and the Virgin Islands at that point in time authorized flow control directly. Maybe by this time there's more. You know, I would say maybe all the states have flow control, authorize their localities to do so. You talk about raising prices. In my time at both authorities, I don't think we raised tipping fees once. Now, Alvin Reiner and Waste Management is my hauler. Actually, I like them pretty well. They do a good job. Not a problem with them. But since I've been in Reiner, they've raised it 4 times. You know, Montgomery County's not raised theirs once. I can't believe people can haul 120 miles and do it cheaper than you can do it here. I mean, if you own a landfill, you can charge yourself any tipping fee you want, right? So, you know, that doesn't make much. You can't compare those two things. You can't compare your landfill to theirs and the cost to run business that way. Voluntary agreements do not work. Paper says so. This gentleman here with his letter of all what he's going to do is factually worthless unless it's somehow put into law or somehow signed so that it can be enforced. He can put anything he wants in his letter. The state, the localities, the jurisdictions cannot, and I know this, you cannot plan ahead. We plan ahead 50 to 100 years in this kind of business. We don't plan ahead until next year. We look out that 150 years. We did New River Valley, New River landfill in Dublin, and it looks out to 150 years. Now it's down, I think, maybe to 100 years, but that's how far we look out. And you can't plan out that way if you're a jurisdiction unless you can control the tipping fee of your trash. You can't do that. You still, and I'm afraid the lawyers in here will jump all over me, but in truth, even though somebody else picks up and hauls it out of state, you can still be responsible for the solid waste and what they do. Now, the state has given you the authority to institute flow control. And if you don't do it, and something happens, then you can well be responsible because you didn't institute what they said. Like Christiansburg has the authority for the police department. But if you don't make the police department, then something happens in the town, you're responsible because you didn't take the authority yourself to make the police department. I don't know what sound I got that. Flow control provides a level playing field. Some of these large companies have their own landfills in different places. You can see where they bought up small guys. You know, they're consolidating. They're letting small guys out of business because they have their own landfills. Now, if everybody deposits in Montgomery County landfill, then everybody is on a level playing field. Everybody's level. And as a matter of fact, we have a good example here. In Northern Virginia in 1995, When they put in flow control in Northern Virginia, over 800 individual trash collection and disposal contractors were competing for business in Arlington County, Fairfax County, and City of Alexandria. They're all on a level playing field.
Okay.
Down here, we're not.
Excuse me, sir, your 5 minutes is up.
Time's gone? All right.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, that's all that we have signed up to speak.
That's all we have signed up to speak on this solid waste flow control. If anybody else would like to come forward and speak, come forward, state your name and address. You have 5 minutes.
Good evening, Mike Beck, 606 Owens Street in Blacksburg. I have property in the town of Blacksburg, small apartment complex, and also single-family home outside in the county. And what I gathered, what I hear from, what I've heard here this evening, I'd like to say, you know, if it's not broke, don't fix it. It seems to be working all right now, and let's go with it. Let's keep the competition going. It's beneficial to everybody.
Does anyone else would like to speak? Seeing no one, we'll close this part of the session.
Mr. Chair, if I could, I would like to mention to those in attendance tonight that there is no action contemplated on the board's agenda this evening. This was just a public hearing for the board to receive comments on either side of the issue. At the present time, we don't have this scheduled for a vote at an upcoming meeting, but as soon as we get direction and hear from the board members, we'll let everyone know if this is back on the table for discussion. So just wanted to let you know that there's no action going to be taken this evening.
Thank you, sir. Next up will be rezoning Bluestone Land Limited.
I believe Ms. Gibson's going to walk us through that.
Good evening. Okay, tonight we have a rezoning public hearing scheduled. It's identified here as Bluestone Land LLC with Balzer and Associates as the agent. This property lies between the two towns off Merrimack Road. It's currently zoned R3 with some proper conditions, and we'll talk about those in a second. But this just gives you a sense of where it's located in the county. And this is what it looks like from an aerial. You can see here, Merrimack is this sort of spine right here. This is phases 1 and 2 of Highlands at the Huckleberry. And the area identified in the subject parcel we'll be speaking about tonight is phase 3 of that project. So some of you might remember this 15 acres was rezoned back in 2011 as part of the overall rezoning with phases 1 and 2. This area identified as phase 3 was going to be either 40 single family dwellings or 42 family dwellings or duplexes, which would be 80 units, but wouldn't exceed a total of 40 lots there. It was part, again, of that larger application, which was 48 acres total, and that RM1 allowed up to 388 apartment units. If you look at what the zoning map looks like now, you can see the portion in yellow is what we're speaking about, and the portion there in yellow, as well as this area right here. This isn't tied to the parcel exactly, so the yellow boundary is still kind of in place. So it's kind of split zone there. And this is the area down. This would all be RM1 based on this application request, so it would all be the same teal color there. This is the concept plan that was provided, and this is a proffered plan to be in general conformance. This shows where the townhouse units are located, how they'll generally be configured. It shows the tie-in to Black Rock Drive, which is down here on the bottom part of the screen. And then this Street A that's along the bottom here, that's actually kind of their construction entrance now. You saw it if you've driven by or if you looked at it on the aerial there. That is actually planned to be improved. It will tie in with Black Rock, and that'll be a state road, part of sort of a street network there. So, as we usually do, we looked at impacts or potential impacts. We talked to VDOT about the project. They were sort of a wash. There are a very slight increase, and I mean it was like 3, so a very slight increase in trips per day, but those peak hour demands changed based on the type of use, so they really felt like there was really no increase in impacts. They did note that Black Rock Drive's been constructed. It's not yet in the system. It has been publicly dedicated, and so we'll need to make sure. We'll probably have maybe both roads go at the same time at this point, but it is ready to go in the system. That other road is called Emergency Access, so that's the reference. If you read the staff report where it talks about Emergency Access Road, that's that area to be upgraded. And those internal streets will likely all be private. You notice some have parking along them, and they'll be maintained as part of the HOA. The infrastructure, so water and sewer is already there serving phases 1 and 2. The extensions for both will come out of phase 1 based on the PSC's review, and the capacity is there to serve these units. There's not an additional number of units being proposed, so the schools showed no additional impacts. That internal street system is identified as being private, so they pulled a bus shelter location all the way down to Black Rock, so a bus will be able to hit the bus shelter that's in phases 1 and 2, and then come up to this, and then loop around however works best for them. One of the items identified in the staff report was that in talking with emergency services, there were concerns about a turning radius at the end of some of the streets, and that if there were multiple vehicles responding, that even with the driveways and the intersections that are there, it's sometimes a vehicle may be forced to be in reverse, which obviously emergency services had some concerns about. We noted in the memo that came to you that during that meeting there was some discussion about taking the parking off the ends of those streets for easier access to the hydrants and vehicle movement, and that's one of the things that the applicant talked about doing in the site plan stage, was trying to maximize that. And the applicant is here tonight, so once I'm done, if you have any additional questions about that, Steve Simonis should be able to help you with those. So we talk a lot in the staff report about consistency with the comprehensive plan. This project is actually located in our UDA, and this particular UDA fills that area between the southern part of Blacksburg and the northern part of Christiansburg, and it kind of fills that area there and shows it as being a target for growth in Montgomery County. So even that was in place even in 2011 when this was originally approved. And the staff report goes in to evaluate these PLUs to make sure that it was evaluated in order to meet the rezoning requirements. And that talks about availability of the transportation and other infrastructure, connecting to other parcels, connecting in pedestrian manners, and having buffers there. We also talk about the fact that this is an area targeted for density and making sure that we are using density and then mixing it in with some compact designs, having recreation areas and having connectivity. And again, making sure it's served by water and sewer. This does provide a separate housing type, so the phases 1 and 2 are apartments. This phase 3 will be single family attached, which is our code language for townhomes. And then this project does have a tie into the Huckleberry Trail, which is a really nice feature that's currently used there, which obviously, as you know, gives you a lot of connectivity throughout the county. The overall comp plan refers this as being part of the UDA, and then there are several other policy statements that are supported, and they mimic some of the ones we just went over related to housing, infrastructure availability, things like that. So based on our analysis, the impacts are fairly minimal. There is no increase in density proposed. There's active recreation area proposed, as well as connectivity to the current sidewalk system and trail system that exists there. The bus shelter will come out to where the state road is so that school buses can easily access. And then amenities will be shared based on the application. There's certain amenities already in place that the different phases will be able to share. And then I already spoke to you regarding the emergency service vehicles concern, and some of that parking, again, being at the end of the street for those two areas proved to be problematic for accessing hydrants. So we talked a little about that and talked about maybe moving that somewhere else during the site plan stage. So that would be slightly different than what's on your concept plan. We did notify all adjoining property owners. We've not received any inquiries, and we had no speakers at the Planning Commission public hearing. The Planning Commission did recommend approval with the proffered conditions that were submitted, and those are general conformance with the master plan that was included with your packet. Architectural style of building similar to those other phases of Highlands at the Huckleberry, so this will look similar. And then no more than 80 townhome units being constructed, and that keeps the density similar with what was the same max density that was approved in 2011. We had a vote of 6-0 with 3 members absent at our last meeting. And that's all I have for you. If you have any questions for me, I'm available, or I can let Mr. Simonis present.
Anyone have any questions?
Yeah.
Supervisor Bone?
At one of the beginning maps that you had, I drove up there and I saw that, I'm not sure if phase 2 is completely developed or not.
They're working on it.
Okay.
It's still under construction.
And then what's under construction, is there anything additional in phase 2 that has not been constructed?
I don't think so. I'm going back to the aerial really quickly, because I think that was our most recent aerial. But I think they're looking at COs on phase 2 right now. So that's this loop road here, so you can't really see it. But that is the remainder of phase 2, yes.
And so can you sort of outline where those 80 townhomes are going to be within that parcel right there?
Oh, sure. There's sort of this high, and Steve may want to do this, but there's sort of this high area here.
So there's quite a bit of property that is not going to be developed.
That's correct, yes. That will remain in open space.
That's all I have.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Simonis is going to speak just a minute about the project.
Good evening. Steve Simonis of Balzer & Associates, 448 Peppers Ferry Road. Wanted to touch on a few items. We've been working with Mr. Park and his group for several years now on a couple different projects, and actually work with him on projects throughout the state out of some of our other offices. If anybody's been up, hopefully everybody's had a chance at some point to go by his project up there. He also recently, as most of the board is aware, did a project in Blacksburg that had workforce housing and lower income senior housing as well. I hope you all would agree that if you look at the quality of construction, the quality of the maintenance on site, the landscaping, they put a really, really high bar up for multifamily housing in the county. It is probably one of the best market rate projects that we have in the county, including Christiansburg and the town of Blacksburg as well. So as Mr. Park started looking at this third phase, as Emily mentioned, it was originally set up and rezoned for single family or duplexes. The townhomes, from what they were seeing from their market analysis, fit more with where their current renters are and where they would like to be. They like the area, they like the neighborhood, they like the quality of the project they're living in. So when they're moving from an apartment into kind of that next step up as you're growing up, a lot of that demographic is looking to a townhouse type of project. What we have here, these are all subdivided for sale units. They each have a single car garage, individual driveway. The additional parking you see on here is some of the overflow parking to get us up to the 2.5 spaces per unit we're required by code. These would be a mix of 2 and 3 story townhomes. Some would have a walkout basement based on the grading. And that's another issue that Bluestone had looked at, is by taking it to a townhouse layout as we have, we're holding the same basic street alignment that were shown in those original concept plans. But by doing a townhouse development, we can compact some of that in and not disturb a lot of that vegetation. Sarah, you were asking about back behind on the back side of it. So all that up to the north of the project will remain as open space. We have two active recreational areas we have here on the upper right-hand corner of the plan, and then down here on the left-hand side. We also have, as Emily mentioned, the bus shelter and some more open space in our trail connection. Water, sewer, stormwater management we'll certainly handle as we're going through the site plan stage. It's proposed to be built out in 3 phases, which we discuss in our application. Kind of wrapping the loop here counterclockwise based on market demand. They could build them all, but they don't want to build 80 units out and have them sit and wait to rent, so they plan to do that construction over time. These would be private trash after our last discussion, but private trash. They're not planning any dumpsters, so people would put their bring their cans into the garage and then take the cans out to the street on trash day. And again, the same architectural and landscape standards for this phase. They would mimic and match what they've done in the other 2 phases as well. To the one point about the emergency services concern, we talked about this at Planning Commission. So right now we have their hydrants. The county, the PSA has standards that we have to hold to as far as how far away we space fire hydrants from each other, and then how far you have to have hydrant coverage, basically hose lay. When you're hooked up and you're dragging hose, how far you have to be around to reach the back corner of a certain building. And that's based on the type of structure it is. So by PSA standards, we have to have a fire hydrant within 250 feet of the furthest point of a townhouse. So when we lay out fire hydrants, we basically take a hose lay and say, okay, if I'm fighting a fire right here, right where it says street, can I get, from a fire hydrant, can I get 250 feet back to the back corner of this unit? So when we started laying out our hydrants, we've got one shown here at the end of these 2 spaces and one shown on this north end. Now we've got other ones throughout the project, but those are the 2 that Mr. Turner had some concerns about, that if the trucks had to get in there, they'd have to back up because we don't have a full cul-de-sac. Now if we put a full 90 diameter cul-de-sac on there, that eats up into a lot of our open space. And as we looked at it, where you get into a little bit, and I don't mean to get in the weeds with the board here, but I want you to understand from an engineering standpoint. So we have to have a coverage area of those hydrants, but we also have to keep a fire hydrant a certain amount of distance away from the townhouse, which is 50 feet. So if you look at some of the areas here where we could keep a fire truck from having to go all the way down to this dead end, we could stick a hydrant right here in these little islands, but then we're closer than 50 feet to the buildings. So what we've talked about and discussed with staff is that we're happy to work with Neil and his staff as we work through the site plan process to either relocate those hydrants. Maybe it's a variance we have to work with the PSA and Bob Frank on. Maybe it's we're signing the streets in there so it's no parking, so the fire trucks don't have to maneuver around parked cars on our drive aisles. But also these are fairly short stubs. A fire truck can make this movement through the development itself. It can make the turning radiuses. So we're talking about a 90-foot stub right here, and you're about 250 feet right here. But again, from a townhouse layout standpoint, there are lots of examples throughout the county where you do have those stubs of parking and drive aisles leading to the end of the townhouse unit. You typically don't see a cul-de-sac at the end of the townhouse development, but we're certainly welcome, happy to work with emergency services and PSA if you all see fit to approve the project as we get into site plan to make sure it's safe for the residents but still works for emergency services as well. I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Anyone having?
I got a question. Is there going to be parking on the streets too?
No, it's not planned to, and we've got a 24-foot drive aisle, which is basically normal 2-way traffic, but it's not a public street. We don't have it wide enough to park, so nobody should be parking on it anyway, and we thought that if we signed it, it would just keep people from feeling like they could park there. But we do have enough parking between the garage space, the driveway spaces, and our additional on-street parking, the perpendicular spaces you see throughout the project that meets our parking code.
Now, why wasn't cul-de-sacs designed into the initial plan? I mean, you have a lot of, looks like open space, and I see you got recreation areas at the end of those two roads. Why wasn't that? I mean, you could have a cul-de-sac with a fire hydrant in it, and maybe move the recreation area. I'm not telling you to do that. I'm curious as to why that wasn't planned in the beginning, because it's not just emergency vehicles you're going to have going in there. They're going to be delivering refrigerators, and you're going to have delivery UPS and everybody, and they're going to have to use driveways, which if there's a car sitting in a driveway, then that could be an issue, and I'm just curious.
Right. There are two main reasons when we looked at it from a topographical standpoint. When you get to the edge of these lots here in our open space, it starts to drop off pretty steep. So by grading out further, if we push the cul-de-sac out another 100 feet for the grading, we've got the cul-de-sac, then we've got the grading to do, and then that pushes our open space further down that hill and further into those existing buffers. And based on the traffic that we've got coming through and the fact that we do have a minimal amount of those short stubs, we felt that the layout here would be adequate for what we were planning to design.
Thank you.
No one's, I was filling in for Sarah for the meeting that took place, and I guess would it be helpful for you if, since there's no one here to speak, or I don't see anyone here to speak on this issue, would it be helpful to move this issue forward tonight as far as your development plans?
Absolutely. If the board sees fit, we'd be happy to move it forward tonight.
Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. No one signed up to speak on this Bluestone land. If anybody would like to come forward, state your name and address, and you have 5 minutes. Seeing no one, we'll close this part.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I guess I would ask my fellow supervisors, typically it's been our policy to go ahead, if there's no one speaking out in opposition, to go ahead and add it to our agenda and vote on it. And I guess is there support to do that this evening? So I guess I would make that motion to go ahead and add it under new business.
And second.
That'd be fine. And in your packet, there's a proposed ordinance, so if you want to make that motion, I'd ask that you make the motion to add that ordinance specifically. Yes.
I would make the motion to add the specific ordinance in our packet this evening, and I believe there was a second.
Yes, second.
Is there any more discussion? Madam Secretary, you call roll to add this.
Ms. Boone?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Ms. Fidzikowski?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Chair King?
Aye.
6 ayes.
Thank you. Now moving on to public address. Don't have nobody signed up? She gonna talk to us?
Are you coming forward to speak?
She's already used her minutes.
Wait a minute, you come up, you didn't say nothing.
She didn't state her name.
What's your name? All right, moving forward. Yes. We have no one signed up. If you'd like to come and address the board on any subject, please step forward, state your name and address, and you have 5 minutes. Seeing no one, we'll close this part. Addendum.
We have no addendum, and you took care of one item already, so we're good.
We're good?
We're good, yes, sir.
Consent agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Madam Secretary, you call roll, please.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Ms. Fidzikowski?
Aye.
Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Ms. Boone?
Aye.
Chair King?
Aye.
6 ayes.
Thank you. Is there a motion to go into work session?
So moved.
Second.
Madam Secretary, you call roll, please.
Ms. Mr. Kowski?
Aye.
Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Chair King?
Aye.
6 ayes.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair and board members, this item is a request that has been channeled through Supervisor Bone relating to a request for no parking on Cherry Lane between Clay Street and Blossom Trail. Orchards 1 and Orchards 2 homeowners associations have requested a no parking zone along Cherry Lane between Clay Street and Blossom Trail. The associations have cited that parking on either side of the street creates a visual obstruction for those turning into the Woods Edge community. And Supervisor Bone, if you want to make any comments on that.
I'm happy to, would it be better for Ms. Gibson to do a presentation? Or no, before I make my comments?
So staff doesn't have a presentation per se based on the request and the information we got. Marty and I have just are prepared to talk about what the next steps would need to be. So if you'd like to speak
Can you
first.
zoom in? Do you have a zoom in? All right, let me just reorient myself. Where is Clay?
Clay's at the bottom of the screen and
Okay.
Cherry's shown here in the teal color.
Right, so they want that street, all of that street, to have no parking?
We're not 100% sure. The first request showed stopping at Pippin, and a later request showed Blossom. So if we move forward, this would be the only segment in question. So if we move forward, we would have to identify that. But as shown, that would be the maximum based on the request we've received.
So I got numerous requests for this. The petition that was required to bring this to the board was fully and properly proposed, and this is in direct response to the development concerns for the new property right there at Clay and Cherry Lane, and this is just precautionary purposes. So I ask that you consider passing this request.
Mr. Chair, I think what we're going to share this evening, I think Ms. Gibson has some comments, and I believe the attorney does as well. Currently, and the reason this is before the board is currently we do not have a no parking ordinance for any secondary roads in the county, so this would be our first one. And in order to enact that, I think there's several things that we have to talk about and consider. And so Emily and Marty, if you want to.
So Marty is going to advise on the specifics of what would be required by an ordinance. As Craig mentioned, we don't have this anywhere else in the county, and there's a couple of different reasons for that. The first reason is this street is one of the streets where it's designed to have on-street parking. It has a curb and gutter set up. A lot of the streets in the county are a ditch and swale, and no parking is allowed on them anyway. So this particular road is built to the standard where it was designed to have parking on the street with the curb there. So in that particular case, which we only see in our more suburban or slightly urban parts of the county, those roads can allow for parking. We don't have it in any of our other subdivisions or on any other secondary road in Montgomery County. As I mentioned, Marty's going to speak to the specifics if we are going to look at adopting one, what that would entail. I've included the vicinity map in this case because, as you can see, geographically, if an ordinance is adopted by you all, it has to be enforced by the sheriff's office. And geographically, that will obviously propose some challenges because the sheriff's office, this isn't a through area, this will be a destination area. So we have reached out to them preliminarily to let them know you were considering it. If we move forward tonight, once you have an understanding from Marty, we'll be involving them to get a sense of what that would look like for enforcement, because there's obviously different options that you may adopt, whether it's towing, ticketing, etc., that they would then be charged with doing on your behalf. Signs will have to be purchased. That will be a cost to the county. They will be installed by VDOT on our behalf. I think that VDOT just wanted to make sure that they shared that level of enforcement is going to be with our local law enforcement, that they are designed to have on-street parking, and that's why parking is currently allowed there. No land use permit would be required because we would get VDOT to install, so that saves us a little bit right there. And I guess overall, there's definitely a lot of unknowns. If this were something that we looked into, that would take us some time to kind of hear from multiple stakeholders on. I don't have a copy of a petition per se. I have 2 documents from homeowners associations. So one of the things we would do would be to make sure that all of the address structures in the area have been notified if we move forward, just to make sure that everyone knew that this was an option. Also, we could look at things related to one side or both sides. I think we have some flexibility there because we don't have anything in place. That being said, I do have a little concern of this setting precedents. I don't know what other roads it could apply to. But typically you see things like parking enforcement done in a more town or city environment because they're set up for that enforcement. This would be sort of standalone for us right now. And with that, I'll let Marty talk to you about what would need to be in an ordinance.
Emily, do you know how long, that's Cherry Lane that you got highlighted, right?
Yes.
Do you know how long Cherry Lane's been there?
Oh, it was the main street that was constructed for the orchards, so late 80s.
Okay, so
Early
it's been there a
90s.
long time.
Yes.
And people have been parking on it for a long time.
Yes.
Thank you.
Before you sit down, sorry, Emily. You said that this would be a destination area for the sheriff's department, meaning that they would have to drive all the way
through this area already. Yeah, yes.
Is there any way to get to that location without driving through the town of Blacksburg?
Well, you could come through Ellett and come up Lester's Gate and take Harding over. You would eventually have to get into the town to get to it.
Yeah.
You know,
Or
you
go all
cut-
the way
cut
around that.
Floyd and then come up. Yes, but that Clay Street itself dead ends with some residential property there, so there's not an actual connection straight through the county. No.
Thank you.
Can I ask some questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Cost of signs, was there any estimate of what that would be?
We didn't get that far. I did ask, but they left it blank. So that'll be one of the things that if we move forward tonight will be part of our due diligence. Not only the cost of the signs, but just like when street signs are damaged and we have to pay to have them replaced, these would be the same. They would be sort of a continuing basis kind of thing.
How much does an average street sign cost?
Funny you should ask that. An average street sign with order and shipping comes in around $50 for street sign.
And do you have any idea how many if this was something we wanted to pursue, how many signs would be needed?
I don't. It would depend on whether it was both sides or not. It would depend on visibility. You certainly want to make sure that everyone would be aware they're in a no parking area. And then we could have some conversation related to, do we have to do signs? Would they allow us to paint curbs, that sort of thing? I think we have several options ahead of us right now.
And when you say paint curbs, is that the yellow paint so that people don't park at the curb?
With the addition of no parking, words along there. Because one of the original requests when this came in was identified as being for site visibility to access the Woods Edge Court area. So that's on one of the pieces of paper we received. So certainly with that sort of, if that's a concern there, where there's vehicles stacked and you can't see other vehicles coming, or even pedestrian traffic, we could also have areas there where maybe not the whole street is blocked off, but a portion could be.
You made a couple of comments about this might be it would set a precedent if in fact we went forward, because it's never been done before. have there ever been requests anywhere else in the county for anything like this?
So as you know, I've not been here too terribly long, so I did ask, and to VDOT's knowledge, there was not, and I don't think Marty did either, and he's been here.
I don't remember.
She started to say how long more than that.
Just longer than me, we'll go with that.
So with that in mind, how much, if we said, yes, please go forward, how much time would this take you to really do the analysis?
So as I mentioned, we'd want to incorporate discussions with the sheriff's office. Marty would need to, as he's going to highlight, incorporate the items that must be required based on state code. And then we'd obviously want to have some engagement with the stakeholders there as well to make sure there was an understanding of kind of options that we were looking at. So there's no way we could do that in less than probably 2 months. That's really a best case scenario. So we'd be looking at a public hearing no earlier than 2 to 3 months from now.
I guess my question is people hours. Is that 100 people hours or I have no idea. It's not 2 months worth of 2 people hours,
Right, yeah, we definitely have other projects going on.
On the high end, I'm not going to hold you to it by any means.
I'm pretty terrible at people hours because I've never worked on the private side, so we just work until we get things done.
Okay.
It would take a while, and it's a little stopping and starting. So it would just sort of get into a project list because things like mailing to people, things like interacting with the sheriff's office, all of that, you kind of have to throw it out there and get a date set and all that.
Okay.
So.
And then I believe that the residents' concerns are primarily when football games would actually occur. So the sheriff's office, highly likely, I'd be surprised if they would be called at all unless it was a football weekend. I'm guessing because no one parks on that street right now. I mean, yeah, 1 or 2 cars, but they're really afraid of a lot of cars parking on that street. And yeah, that street is wide and has whatever you call gutters or whatever. It's not, I can see it's not like a gutter that I know of, but it is the edge of the street where the water goes down. It's not like the edge of the street goes down like this to make a gutter. It's just crowned and goes. So, yeah, so let's see. I would like to make sure that based on the additional information that you've shared with us and whatever Marty's going to share with us, that we at least wait until another meeting so that the residents would have an opportunity to talk to us about it. Thank you.
Anything?
I was just going to ask, do we have anybody maybe that paints lines? I mean, because VDOT doesn't paint curbs that I know of. So I guess we would get Parks and Rec to paint the curbs.
We don't have the equipment to paint curbs.
I don't know who would paint the curbs.
We'd have to contract for it, I would expect.
That would be the most efficient way to do it,
I was just sitting there thinking in my head, we don't take care of the roads, VDOT does, and I'm sitting there thinking,
I don't know, we've been talking about a fun day for the leadership team. Maybe we
We could do it on the road tour.
Okay, I just want to make sure in my mind that we don't, okay.
Start the Montgomery County. All right.
Yep.
Well, to my surprise, when we first started looking at this, because you figure VDOT maintains the roads, right? So we're thinking, well, that's VDOT's call on putting restrictions. Somehow Montgomery County got into a code section, and it had to happen in 89 or 90 because I don't remember being a party to it, and I've been here for so long. That's right. But anyway, it says, notwithstanding the provisional law, the governing bodies, it lists 8 counties, most of them much bigger than us, by ordinance may restrict or prohibit parking on any part of the state's secondary system of highways within their boundaries. And you could provide for a classification of vehicles, so you could limit it to trucks or something like that, but you're not really talking about that. And you have to provide in the ordinance, you have to do it by ordinance, and you have to provide that the violation shall constitute a traffic infraction, and then you have to prescribe what those penalties will be. Now, the problem is you're going to incur man hours. There's going to be costs because you're going to have sheriff's office going to have to enforce it that they're not already doing. And as Emily pointed out, it's not an area that they normally would be, so they're going to have to, my guess, you have to respond on a complaint basis if someone calls, say, hey, they're parking on the road, come do something. Also, the ordinance requires, and I assume county finance would have to handle this, and I haven't said anything to Angie, so if she's watching, I apologize. But if the way you set it up is the county has to keep track of uncontested payments and penalties. So the way these things work is if you don't contest it, you pay, right? And then it goes away. It's just a traffic infraction. It's not anything anything against your driving record. If you don't pay, then you're in essence contesting it. And so what the ordinance says is you have to keep track of all the uncontested payments and penalties, and the county has to do that, and that any officer or employee shall then report on a proper form to the appropriate district court any persons contesting the citations for violation of the ordinance. So anyone who contests them, then we have to issue citations and summons for them to come to court. So we have that paperwork to do. And then you have to keep track of the money they're collecting, and you have to actually issue warrants. So then we're going to actually have somebody go out and serve those people that have contested those. So we're setting up a whole, it's a lot more than just, hey, you got to move your car. If they're going to get cited and they don't think they should have to pay, they can contest it, and then we have to administer it, get it to court, and go through that process. How many man hours that is, I have no idea. But there is a cost, and and the finance would have to administer the money, keep track of it. And those who can, they'd have to keep track of those who contest and pay or don't pay.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
What possible reason could they come up with to contest if their car was parked there and they got a ticket and there was a no parking sign? What grounds could they?
The sign wasn't at least 3 feet tall. You didn't have it yet painted yellow. I wasn't driving the car. It's not my responsibility.
It's not my car.
Not my car.
Improperly signed on the road.
I mean, now you're looking at a criminal defense attorney, and then my job is to find reasons. Now nobody's going to hire me on a parking ticket.
Right.
But you would be amazed at how many educated folks that we have here in Montgomery County that represent themselves, which they have a constitutional right to do, and come up with all sorts of wonderful arguments. We have a lot of engineers who don't believe the lasers, the radar, and I'm looking back at Deputy Weaver, who is nodding his head. So
Supervisor Fidzikowski, I think is right.
So those are the things that automatically come to mind. Now, the vast majority, are they going to pay it?
Right.
Or something along those lines? Sure.
A lot of them won't pay it at all, and they won't contest it, so then you got to go after them.
And then you have to go after whether you, right now until July 1, I guess their license could be suspended as a result of a parking ticket. Then they could get a driving on suspended charge, which is a jailable offense.
And then they will need you.
And then they would need me. And now, obviously the law, as I understand it, I haven't got my legal updates, but July 1, that may change about losing licenses for traffic infractions.
Right.
But, so.
Sounds like an economic development opportunity.
Well, as much as I appreciate that, I don't know that there's going to be many people hiring attorneys on a parking ticket. I was thinking in 25 years, there was one that was challenged in the town of Blacksburg that I recall that had counsel, and they were able to win that one. But there was a legitimate issue about they have to have a sign, and I believe the handicap signs have to be at least 3 feet tall. and it wasn't there. And they had the blue on the ground, but they didn't have the sign.
So if the town of Blacksburg, that has a lot of no parking signs, has only had one contested.
No. One with a lawyer.
With a lawyer.
That I have seen.
Right.
In court. Now, that does not mean that they don't contest them. That's just saying Chris Tuck is in court a lot, because that's what I do. But there's been one that I've seen was contested by an attorney.
And if it's not contested with an attorney, it usually goes pretty quick. I would expect.
That means that that deputy is going to have to sit there on a contested case. Now, first they're going to go through all of their cases that there's nobody there contesting. And then they're going to set aside the contested cases. So that deputy on the contested parking ticket could be sitting there for 2 to 3 hours. Because they'll set the docket at 8:30 and they'll start that docket, and the first thing they'll do is all agreements or people that did not show up to court. And so found guilty, parking ticket, found guilty, speeding ticket, all those things. Then at the end of the docket, they'll have the contested cases that are going to take more time. So when they do that,
And deputies can be called in on their days off too in court. So they can be required to appear for hours and hours and hours on a contested parking ticket on their day off.
Right. And even if it's not contested, we have to collect them, because if we don't do that, then we could be criticized and even challenged constitutionally that we're not enforcing the ordinance in a fair way. So you can't just say, well, we won't go after the people who don't pay. We'll only so if you don't pay but don't contest, we still got to have a deputy show up in court to show to the judge that, hey, this car was there at this date on this time, because the judge is going to want to hear that evidence. So.
I think I'd be happy to call the town of Blacksburg and find out what their numbers are like for no parking.
But they have meter maids, don't they?
I think they probably do, yeah.
But not everywhere, right?
But the town is 19 square miles. The county is 400 square miles. I mean,
but we're only talking about, 2/10 of a mile.
Yeah.
No one else in the history of Marty has ever requested no parking signs.
That's true, because we don't have the same problem the town does. I mean, obviously the town has a problem with
but obviously,
students parking in residential areas.
The county doesn't have density like this very many places either. Public roads with density like this.
And I guess we're anticipating there could be a problem, but at least right now, when I went out there numerous times, now I did hear the citizens talk about Super Bowl parties that they have, and that sometimes when they have residents who have they have the hokey houses, so that they rent these houses and they only have them for tech games. Well, from a local government perspective, those are wonderful people because they're paying taxes. We don't have to worry about Department of Social Services. We don't have to worry about so many of the services, education, but they're still paying the same tax rate that somebody who's raising a child and all those things. So if they're buying these houses and they're thinking they're going to be able to park in the street and have some of their friends there for a weekend, and now we're going to be writing them tickets?
Well, do you realize that they're not asking for no parking signs along Clay Street? And there's supposed to be a lot of parking within the development. I don't.
No, I'm talking about the existing houses. They're already there. That
there aren't that many. From what I can recall, there aren't that many hokey houses in that development at this time. That's not. They're concerned about the new development being hokey houses, and then it's spilling out onto Cherry Lane, but they're not requesting for Clay Street, so technically they could park on Clay Street, and it's not that far. So
Clay Street doesn't have gutters.
Yeah, Clay Street doesn't have the gutters, right?
They can't park on. There's no parking on Clay Street.
Are there signs on Clay Street?
There doesn't have to be. It's a state road without the curb and gutter.
Well, given the constraints of what's discussed, to me, if I had to live within these rules, I'd call my neighbors and say, hey, do you have an extra spot in your driveway that I can have a friend park in your driveway for, the game or something like that? I guess that's the only way that they could do it, right? Unless, clearly in the development there, that's not developed yet. They do have extra parking spots, so there is some space, but, you know. According to our ordinances or whatever, you know, there's supposed to be enough parking within that development. I would ask that we, given all this new information, that we give the neighbors an opportunity to come speak to us at a meeting in the near future.
So basically, what I'm hearing is they're trying to prevent something from happening that hasn't happened, like Chris was alluding to.
That is correct. They want to be proactive.
But it hasn't happened for
hasn't.
40 years. That's the part I don't get. I mean, why now?
Because they want to be proactive. That's why.
I get it.
I'm not asking for Emily or Marty to do any further analysis. I'm just asking us to give the neighbors an opportunity based on the new information to come comment.
How would that structure look? Like, if we, I mean, I know they could always and are welcome to come during public address at any time, but how would we have a public hearing on an issue with no resolution, no ordinance, no nothing? No proposed, I'm looking at Craig and Marty.
Yeah, and I was thinking just public address.
Yeah, you could have it as public, you could have it as public address.
Or a delegation, I guess you could.
Well,
Yeah.
what I had suggested to the chair as well is you could have it as a work session item again for an upcoming meeting and let the public know that that's going to be talked about in a work session, which would allow them to come speak under public address prior to that work session, if that's what.
They don't need that permission to speak during public address.
Well, no, they don't. They can come anytime and speak.
Yeah, they don't need permission.
And that's correct.
And I clearly told these HOAs that we were going to discuss it tonight. And, you know, if they wanted to show up to speak during public address, they are encouraged to do so.
So,
And there's no
I
one
would
here.
suggest following up with them, letting them know to watch the video since they aren't here this evening, and if they want to come to a future public address, I mean, they're always welcome to, but I don't think it's necessary to have a dedicated hearing, or we don't have anything really to have a dedicated hearing about without an ordinance. So my suggestion would be just to follow up with them and let them know, hey, here's the link to the video, this is where we talk about it, and public address is open every single meeting.
And so we wouldn't bring this to a vote at any point in time unless...
We'd have to have something to
We
vote
have
on.
enough.
We'd have to have an ordinance. There'd be quite a bit more studying having to be done.
So that decision to ask Ms. Gibson and Marty doesn't have to be done at this moment in time.
No.
We can just let it go, and then if we want to bring it back up, we can bring it up another time. Okay. So I asked my fellow supervisors to let this go, and if it comes up again, we'll address it at the next time.
Is there any more discussion? Is there a motion to come out of work session?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
I'll do the second.
Madam Secretary, call roll, please.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
Aye.
Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Chair King?
Aye.
6 ayes.
Mr. Chair, under new business, we have a couple of items this evening. First is the resolution related to the Old Blacksburg High School and HS development. It is a request to amend the provisions of the promissory note from HS Development to Montgomery County to extend the first deferred payment by 5 months from April 24th to September 24th.
This time I will turn this part over to the Vice Chair, Motts.
Don't you guys be getting crazy. I don't want to have to use the gavel. Is there a motion?
There's a motion.
Second.
Any discussion?
There is a little bit of discussion. We shared a lot of information. This is something that we have discussed. Now it's public in closed session. But the town of Blacksburg at this point in time is looking to purchase this land. And one of the things that they reached out to us, and David Hagan is ready to write the check for $1 million, but he doesn't want to write the check if it should really be coming from the town of Blacksburg. The town of Blacksburg at this point in time is saying that they needed a little bit of time to gather the capital. And obviously this was a very controversial issue when it came up. There were a lot of us who talked about it. There was Vice Chair DeMott's made a presentation about it, but we specifically put a provision in allowing the town of Blacksburg to be able to assume this contract with the hopes that the town of Blacksburg would eventually purchase it. And so it is my understanding, while the name is H&S Development, it's the town of Blacksburg through H&S Development that is asking for this extension to give them the opportunity to be able to purchase it. If they aren't able to purchase it by the 24th, then David Hagan's going to move forward and we'll get our payment, and if it's one day late, then we get the interest on it. So.
Okay, and I wanted to just say, it looks like nobody else has anything to add. I wanted to just say, on this subject in particular, I have had a little bit of heartburn here because, as Supervisor Tuck pointed out, I was very passionately opposed to making this deal for an interest-free loan to HS Development in the first place. However, that opposition was grounded in a desire for the town of Blacksburg to be the owner of this property. And so I've struggled a little bit because of my original opposition with how to feel about this. But I do think, in my own opinion, that allowing the town and HS Development 5 additional months to work together furthers my original goal of the town purchasing the property in the first place. And so I just wanted to explain to everybody that that has given me a bit of heartburn in making this decision. All right, there's a motion and a second. No more discussion. Madam Secretary, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Fisakowski?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Ms. DeMott?
Aye.
Chair King?
I'll be abstaining from voting.
Have 5 ayes, 1 abstain.
Back to you, Chair King.
Well, you're doing good.
Well,
Bless your heart.
thanks.
All right, the next item we have under new business this evening, board members, is a declaration proclaiming May 2019 as Business Appreciation Month.
So moved.
Second.
No, that was it. Sorry. Be glad to discuss that any further, but
Any more discussion? Madam Secretary, call roll, please.
Ms. DeMott?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Fisakowski?
Aye.
Chair King?
Aye.
6 ayes.
thank you, Mr. Chair. Next item C under new business is a proclamation proclaiming May 15th as Police Officers Memorial Day and May 12th through 18th, 2019 as National Police Week.
I'd make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Madam Secretary, call roll, please.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Fisakowski?
Aye.
Ms. DeMott?
Aye.
Chair King?
Aye.
6 ayes.
County Attorney's report. Where we at?
Yep, one more item of new
Yeah.
business that we add.
Yes.
Yeah.
It ain't on my computer.
No, it's
It
not.
ain't on here, so it don't happen.
Sorry. We did have a motion and a second to add the resolution approving ordinance, sorry, thank you, keep me straight. Ordinance for the rezoning request from Bluestone Land LLC based on the previous public hearing.
Any discussion?
Make the motion.
Second.
I thought there already was a motion. No.
No, we made a motion to put it in the new
Okay.
business and put it on there now.
Yeah, we put it, we passed
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
so now
yeah,
it's
yeah.
actual.
Action on the item, on the ordinance.
Madam Secretary, call roll, please.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Fisakowski?
Aye.
Ms. DeMott?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Chair King?
Aye.
6 ayes.
That's it for new business.
Is that all up?
That's it.
Can I continue
You
on
can-
now?
Please do so.
I think now it's proper for me to tell you I have no report.
Spoken enough.
What did he say?
No,
No report. Shocking.
I'm gonna have a report.
Well, Mr. Chair, I haven't been here nearly as long as Marty, so I do have a report.
I think Carol and I have actually been here longer than Marty.
It's probably true. I have just, as I say always, I have just a couple of items, actually 5 this evening. I did want to report that the initial meeting of the Broadband Planning Committee that's working on with the Regional Commission on this broadband initiative met this morning. Had a really good turnout, a lot of good comments. We will be having a follow-up meeting once the RFPs have been submitted back to us in a couple of weeks, so we'll keep you advised as to that. But very good meeting, very good representation from the 2 towns, and great representation from other folks in the county. So very, very positive meeting. A couple of ribbon cuttings coming up to mention to you. The Regional Tourism Office has a satellite office in Blacksburg. It has been formerly in the office adjacent to the Lyric Theater, but we've recently moved that office to the facility that most people know it as the Artful Lawyer Building. Creedmoor offices over on North Main Street. The Regional Tourism Office is going to have a ribbon cutting that the Chamber is supporting this Thursday at 8:30 for that initiative, if you're interested in being in Blacksburg at 8:30 on Thursday morning. Also, I emailed you about ribbon cutting for the burn building that we've talked about for years and finally got completed. That will be this Friday at 4 p.m. at the burn building site on Merrimack Road. Also, Broomin' and Bloomin' is this Saturday. Didn't mean to steal your thunder. I'll stop there so I'm not stealing thunder there. And also, last but not least, I will be making a trek to Richmond, not this Friday, but next Friday for a VACO Budget Committee meeting. So if you need anything taken to Richmond next week, I'll be glad to do that as well. And that's all I have, sir.
Thank you, sir. Supervisor B.
I just wanted to let you all know that the New River Valley Community Services Board has been going to each locality and doing a community conversation on addiction. So I attended the one last Tuesday evening from Montgomery County. It was held in Blacksburg. We had about probably, I would think about 30 people there. They provided like food, and then they had a discussion on the science of addiction and available treatment options, and then they had a person that actually had gone through the recovery process and is now a peer counselor, so that was very interesting. And then they had a panel discussion. So this is something that, if you know, in our community, that is of interest to a lot of folks. So and they had law enforcement there and parole, so it was very I thought very well attended. So that's it.
That's all you have? Mm-hmm. Thank you, ma'am. Supervisor Bone.
I'm not sure if this is when I'm supposed to bring this up, but I appreciate the debate about the flow control, or at least the presentations about the flow control, and I'd encourage us to have a pro presentation and a con presentation so that we can ask questions in the future. I don't know if we could do that. And then also to celebrate Earth Day, the Habitat for Humanity has the Repair Cafe. And what that is anyone in the community can bring 2 items to be repaired, whether it's a lamp that just doesn't work anymore, or a pair of jeans that needs a button put on or hemmed or what have you. So it's always a great event at the Restore at 1675 North Franklin Street in Christiansburg. Also on Earth Day, you can see the repurposing of slightly used items, and there's going to be judging as to whoever created the best repurposed thing, and the items are at the Restore right now, and they are incredible. I encourage you to stop by the Restore and see the repurposed items, and especially see whoever wins. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Tuck.
The fire and rescue meeting was canceled this week, and so I don't have a report from that meeting. The planning commission was a brief meeting, and we've kind of seen everything that came before there, so I have no report.
Supervisor Stevens.
No report.
Vice Chair DeMoss. The applicant administrator took your thunder.
I know. Broomin' and bloomin'.
I only rumbled, you can finish that.
This coming Saturday, with an event to follow at Mid-County Park at 1 o'clock, kind of a celebration of volunteers. Please do contact us if you would like to sign up for Broomin' and Bloomin'. And I have presents for everybody today.
It's your birthday. You brought
I know, it's my birthday and I brought you all presents. So, on your birthday, you all owe me presents. This weekend, Jennifer, our amazing public information officer, helped me an incredible amount to work with the Sustainable Blacksburg people to do the Earth Day pedal post. You guys remember at our last meeting, they brought that information to us. And so Jennifer set up a tent, and she and I held it up together for a while out in the Huckleberry Merrimack Coal Mining Park area. And the volunteers brought me a big stack of letters, and they were divided out. So we have one stack to the Montgomery County Board of Supervisors. These are kind of more generalized issues. Supervisor Sarah Bone. And they also gave me these little carvings, and it says Earth Day Pedal Post 2019. Thank you. So this is just a nice reminder from them that we have participated, and also thanking us for our participation. Todd. And these letters are coming from adults and children. We were strongly encouraged to give a handwritten response to each of them. They were written by district, so if you have a bigger stack than others, that means there were more people from your district there writing letters. These are for Daryl. Can you keep those for me?
Thank you, sir.
You got some light work, Steve?
Make mine stick.
And that's all I've got.
Make mine stick.
What should I do with the ones that are generally addressed to the board? Pass those to Vicki. She can respond.
Okay. She can have.
That's all I have.
That's all you have. Thank you,
We
man.
can get those scanned in and sent to you if you'd like.
She wants you to answer.
Do we have any,
Stationary.
stationary to use?
Yeah, to answer.
We have some note cards somewhere. We'll be glad, Judy
Yeah,
has
we
this.
need something that has some Montgomery County.
Be glad to get those for you.
Yeah. That was good. I have no report. Meeting adjourned.